When the Kia e-Niro was launched in 2018, it proved something of a surprise hit. Here was a pure electric car that was practical, decidedly unweird, and had the kind of range you expected from something twice the price. It looked gently conservative, though small crossovers generally aren't the sexiest things on the road anyway. Came with a superb warranty and tons of kit. People liked it so much that the only thing to get really upset about was the fact that there was a substantial waiting list to get a new one. But it's been refreshed and the model range tweaked as the government's plug-in car grant has moved around. So is it still in the running as one of the most useful EVs out there? I think we should find out.
So, is the e-Niro good looking enough or a bit too bland for your taste? Please do let us know in the comments, because engagement pleases my boss. And Ginny Buckley is frankly terrifying when she's angry, like a tiny brunette Hulk. Personally, I think it's perfectly acceptable. I mean, it's not cutting edge, but it's also not something that's wacky for the sake of it or makes you wince to look at it. The thing I like the most is that it's an intensely practical car. Because it's quite broad in the back, you can actually get 3 proper people back there with shoulders and legs and everything. And the boot is also generously practical. It's 451 litres with the seats up and 1400 with the seats down. So your dog will be comfortable on days out or just generally bobbling about. Now, onto the inside, because this is more of the same. And what I mean by that is that the interior is kind of common sense and nice rather than all spangly. This is a mid-range 3 model, and that means that it comes with the bigger 10.25-inch touchscreen and nicer leather and some other bits like heated seats and a heated steering wheel. But I like the fact that you've got the touchscreen and then loads and loads of actual real physical buttons. So you can find a heated seat without having to navigate through menus. It does make a big difference to me. Other than that, I've got a really nice seating position. I can see out of it. There is a bit of a blind spot back in the C-pillar. The quality generally feels really, really good. It's just a nice textured place to be. This is the kind of car that doesn't stun you but impresses over time because it's just a nicer thing. There's also loads of practical storage. Again, I keep mentioning that word practical, but this is a little shelf, and in there is a wireless charger for your phone. Then there's a big space here where you can put your handbag or your wallet or whatever you need to store. Then because this is an electric car, this whole unit is basically storage. In here is a little covered thing with yet another a power outlet, so you can put stuff in there to charge. And then under this roller cover in the center here is more storage, like a big open space. But what is, I think, my favourite bit of the e-Niro, and that is the Ninja cup holders, because there is nothing here, and then you press the button, they just pop out of nowhere. It's like magic. This car, it doesn't shock you in any way, but that's a good thing. This will be the perfect car for people who don't know about electric cars, because you just get in, you put your foot on the brake, you turn this little rotary gear selector to D, and then it's a go-kart. It's go and stop. There's regenerative braking from the paddles, but everything else is familiar. And I think that's the point with this car. It's familiar, it's gentle. This is a gentle way of learning about EV. And it just so happens it's got one of the best batteries and drivetrains in the business as well. It's all stacking up pretty well.
The e-Niro range has recently been updated for both price and spec. There's a smaller 39 kilowatt-hour battery in the e-Niro 2 at the bottom, and that offers 180 miles of WLTP range for £30,345 after the government's incentive grant. That gets an averagely decent amount of kit that includes an 8-inch touchscreen and a 7-inch digital display, 17-inch alloys, reversing camera, keyless go and part cloth and part leather upholstery, as well as quite a lot of other bits and bobs, including lots of useful driver assistance systems.
The one that actually makes the best sense for the range in terms of money is called the Kia e-Niro 2 64 kilowatt. Now that comes in at 34,295, which means that it actually qualifies for the government's plug-in grant, but you get the longer range battery and more powerful motor. So you get £2,500 off the retail price. The problem with that is it does come with less kit. So it's the same kit as the 2 grade with the smaller battery. That means a 7-inch touchscreen and a lot less kind of toys. Be aware that it does feel like a much cheaper car than these higher grades, the 3, 4 and 4 Plus. But saying that, it's only a couple of grand more for an extra 100 miles of range, a bigger battery and more speed. So it is tempting.
3 and 4 Plus grades both have the more powerful hardware. This one is a 3, which add all the spangly things like full leather heated seats, a 10.25-inch touchscreen, LED lights, and an 8-speaker JBL stereo upgrade, and an 11kW 3-phase AC charging capability. But they weigh in at just 37,100 and 39,395 respectively, with no money off because their list price is over the government cap of 35 grand. You got that?
The thing is, Kia are actually wise to you getting cute and ordering a lower spec Kia 2 with a 64kWh battery and then optioning up all the really good bits from the other models. Basically, you can't get around the government's plug-in car grant by buying a cheaper car with a cheaper list price and then adding all the juicy bits on an options list, because basically colour is the only real option. It does keep the range simple. There are only 4 grades, but if you want the better gear, like the 10.25-inch touchscreen and the leather, you will pay quite a lot more for them. Also, there was quite a long waiting list for these cars when they were new, but Kia assures us that now, if you want a car that's in the same colour and spec as you want, it can be delivered to your dealer within 10 to 14 days. And if you want a specific model, then it'll be 10 to 12 weeks to be manufactured and shipped, which is pretty standard. The driving is pretty much as you would expect, because the Kia e-Niro is actually a very solid performer. It's actually pretty quick, getting from rest to 62 miles an hour, which is the kind of standard sprint, in 7.8 seconds, which is almost kind of warm hatch territory. But I think it's actually a little bit quicker than that. It does have a slight tendency to spin its wheels if you're pulling out of a junction briskly, if it's anything other than bone dry, but that's actually not a problem that's particular to this car. It happens in quite a lot of electric cars, and nothing that you can't cope with once you've adjusted your driving style. And once you get going, everything calms down and it becomes very relaxing. It's quite chilled actually once you're moving. It's one of those cars where there's decent vision. There is quite a big blind spot in the C-pillar, but you get a reversing camera to deal with that. And everything is just really easy to use. It's an easy car to drive. The ride is similarly good, but not perfect. If you hit lots of little ridges, it can get a little bit jiggly, but the big stuff is dealt with pretty much perfectly. It's not really a true one-pedal car. I mean, if I let it go, it will bring it to a stop, but it's not aggressive like something like a Nissan Leaf or a BMW i3. So it's quite an interesting one. It feels like it's been judged really well, if you know what I mean. And that good judgment carries over to the rest of the range and some of the other aspects that you need to know about. The e-Niro has a standard heat pump, but only in the 4 Plus grade, which is like the top grade, and it has a battery heater across all the other models. And charging and efficiency generally on these cars is top notch for the cash. On a home wall box, the basic 64kWh battery will charge in about 10.5 hours. Perfectly average and useful, but don't forget you are getting quite a lot of mileage and charge into that battery for the cash. It's good, believe me. Not sparkling, but good.
Stick it on a big charger for 45 minutes and you'll throw in around 160 miles of range, only limited by the 77kW charging from the car. Though charging does start fast and then tail off a little bit. On a more common 50kW charger, you'll see the same amount of range in just over an hour. Yes, it could have 100kW charging ability for even more convenience, but at this price, I think that's still pretty good and excellent for what most people will regularly need. It's worth saying here that the e-Niro really is good at turning electrons into forward motion. The WLTP range figure might be a bit inaccurate as usual at 282, but I've seen 250 plus out of this drivetrain in pretty much all conditions. It's genuinely excellent. And one thing not to be overlooked, but the e-Niro also comes with a 7-year or 100,000 mile warranty, which means peace of mind, both new and second hand.
I have to say that I actually think that the Kia e-Niro is still one of the class leaders for the money. It's really rather brilliant. Yes, something like an MG ZS is less cash, but I wouldn't hesitate to recommend one of these cars. The problem that the e-Niro actually has is that these days it hasn't got such a wide open field in which to play. There's cars like the Skoda Enyaq and the VW ID4, and they also start in the early £30,000 range. Yes, they do have smaller batteries and slightly less range, but they do feel slightly newer and they've been created as bespoke electric cars, so they tend to be a bit more spacious. There's also a load of slightly smaller cars that are coming out that have got really efficient drivetrains and batteries. So yes, it has got a bit more complicated. But if you want a car that's practical, sensible, with more than its fair share of common sense, the Kia e-Niro is still one of the class leaders. I just don't think I'll be saying that next year.
As ever, with so many options to choose from, if you're confused, please do log on to electrifying.com and we'll attempt to help you navigate the world of electrification. We use proper maps and everything.